professor in political science and at the Baylor School of Environment. My research is really about what I call the contentious politics of fossil fuel production. So what does it mean to continue producing fossil fuels in a climate crisis? If I was explaining my research to a 7-year-old, I might use a sandbox analogy. I might explain how there are all kinds of different toys. Some are perhaps older toys and maybe newer toys. And right now there's some arguments in the sandbox about what toys we should be using. And this is a metaphor for the kinds of energy that we require as a society. There's a lot of debates about older, dirtier forms of energy and a lot of debates about newer, cleaner forms of energy. So my research looks at who is winning this fight in the sandbox over what toys we should be using. Yeah, my research is really focused on how we get ourselves out of a problem that we're in. And that problem is how do we move away from energy systems that are very dependent on what's called fossil fuels. So these are coal, oil, and natural gas. And so my research is thinking about what are the kinds of policies and rules and incentives that we need to move our energy systems away from these really heavy polluting fossil fuels towards cleaner and greener and alternative forms of energy. About how is it that we can move forward in a relatively quick manner given the timeline that we have in dealing with the climate crisis, but also to make sure that we don't, for example, throw out the window important processes around, for example, assessing our environmental impacts of energy, the kinds of agreements that need to be in place with the peoples on whose territory and often unceded territory this energy development is taking place on. And so talking about what it means to do this in partnership with Indigenous communities and First Nations in Canada. My research is really grappling with a lot of these tensions, right? As being a very fossil fuel dependent economy, particularly in Canada. What does it mean to have an energy transition? How can we speed up the positive developments that are already taking place across Canada? But what does it also mean to think about diversifying our sources of energy and diversifying our economic sources? To think about a world which we're already headed, where fossil fuels either plateau and then ultimately decline. So what really excites me about this field is the amazing people and organizations that are doing really incredible and inspiring work. I really came to this as a concerned young adult, someone that was very worried about the climate crisis, didn't know what tools were available to do anything about it, and so that led me down a very deep and long rabbit hole in terms of thinking about what are the research problems that need to be solved in order to move us forward. When I'm thinking about how to approach my different problems and research questions. Some work I do involves language and framing, so analyzing how policymakers and often corporations use the kinds of language around energy transition and really unpack what that means and the impact that language has. So language like clean is a big one, but sometimes it can be a bit of a misnomer. So can things like net zero. So can things like natural gas as a climate solution. So some of my research looks into what it means to use this kind of language and what policymakers and corporations are actually doing, and not just the words that they're using. I'd say one thing that has really surprised me about doing this research is the amount of work that's already being done. It's really about often scaling up solutions that are already in place. It's often not the case that we're starting from scratch or starting from zero. It's often, you might hear something in the media, it seems like a dominant voice, a dominant perspective, but it often doesn't reflect all the different kinds of perspectives and work that's going on behind the scenes around energy. It's a great question. I think there's lots of opportunities because things are moving so quickly. In the Canadian context right now, we're being really swept up with this wave of pipeline fervor, this sort of justification using kind of the geopolitics of Trump's America, changing energy markets, to suggest that we need to, for example, scrap environmental assessment in the Canadian context in order to pave the way for more efficient processes. I've done a lot of studying. My book project, Mega Pipelines, Mega Resistance, looks at what happens when regulatory processes are intentionally constrained in order to make more efficient processes for industry. And my research shows that this oftentimes backfires. So right now, what we're seeing is a really dramatic kind of rescaling and what we're really seeing right now is a kind of dramatic shifting of the landscape for those that are invested and interested in energy and climate politics in Canada. So there's lots of questions, lots of a need for a lot of different kinds of research right now in this particular moment, in this political moment. I've been super just grateful to be able to work with amazing students at McGill as research assistants in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and I'm really inspired by the questions that students bring to me. They keep me on my toes, and I'm really looking forward to diving into some of these themes and questions again this fall, both at McGill Energy and in the classroom.